Hey, what's up guys, Will's Garage here. Today I'm going to be installing the AutoSolutions short shift kit on my E92 M3. I noticed there isn't much information available for the installation on this kit online, so hopefully you guys will find this information helpful. And if you do, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content in the future. Alright, this is the stock shifter. As you can see, there's a lot of play. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Reverse. I'm going to start off with removing the boot. If you have an illuminated shift knob, you're going to have to disconnect the wiring. And next, we're going to put two hands on this and pull it straight up. I'm going to have to put the camera down to do this. Alright, now that we got the boot and shift knob off, we're going to take the foam out. Alright. Got this rubber boot that we got to remove out. So I've finagled with this boot for a while because I was being extra cautious not to rip it. It's made out of pretty pliable rubber. In order to get it out without ripping the boot, you really got to get your fingers underneath and lift and go all around, slowly lifting it out. Next, you're going to have to lift the car and put it on 4 jack stands. If you don't know how to do that, here's a link to it on the upper right hand corner. Once you have the car secured on jack stands, next step is to remove the transmission heat shield, and it's held in by various nuts and bolts, mainly 8mm and I believe 10mm. You're going to also have to remove the midsection heat shield, and in order to do that, you're going to have to lower the exhaust system. A lot of people mention that you're going to have to remove the exhaust system entirely, but I was able to get away with just lowering the mid to rear section of the exhaust. And you can do that by removing a few bolts, as I'm showing here. And you're also going to have to unbolt the hose clamps that connect the midsection of the exhaust to the rear. Once you have all that done, and you remove all the nuts and bolts to the midsection of the heat shield, you should be able to peel it off and shift the heat shield back towards the rear of the car. This is what it looks like with the exhaust hanging and the heat shield pushed back. Alright guys, this is what it looks like. I have the rear bottom part of the exhaust disconnected. Get the brace disconnected here, which allowed me to shift the heat shield back towards the rear of the car. With the heat shield pushed back, you can now see the drive shaft, and up from here you can see the carrier for the shift lever. To make more working room, you're going to have to remove the transmission support bracket. This is held in by 4 bolts from the bottom, and there's also 2 bolts from the top of the transmission mount, which you'll also have to remove in order to drop the bracket. But before you do all of this, make sure you have a jack supporting your transmission so that as soon as you drop the bracket, your transmission has something to sit on. Then you have to lower the transmission about 1 to 2 inches to make room. Right above the drive shaft, you can see the shift lever connecting to the selector rod, and there's a clip right at the elbow. There's a bunch of little dust on it, but I'm going to stick a screwdriver in there and remove the clip. This is what it looks like with the clip removed. And now you can remove the selector rod. There's also another joint towards the front of the car, similar to this one, which you're going to have to remove. That one connects to the transmission, and I wasn't able to show it here because it was such a tight fit. Alright, I got the selector rod out, and this is what it looks like. Alright guys, now we're back up in the car. We're going to remove the shift lever. To remove this, you can use needle nose pliers or screwdrivers, lodging it into the plastic casing and rotating it to the right. Once you rotate it to the right, it should pop straight out. Next, you're going to go back underneath the car to remove the aluminum carrier. In order to do that, there's 2 clips in the front here. That's what it looks like unclipped. You also need to pull the tab out, and this is what it'll look like. At this point, you can remove the carrier by pulling it out of the rear bushing, as you can see here. I wasn't aware that you can pry the bushing out, but I found out later on during the installation, which I'll show you. I finally got this thing out. It was a huge pain. Now with the carrier out, you can pop up the old front bushings. The kit comes with new urethane bushings, and I spoke to Ronald, who's the owner of AutoSolutions, and he recently came out with a new urethane rated bushing, which is rated 70A. Previously he was using 95A for all his customers, but there were some people who were complaining about vibrations and noise, so I personally didn't want any additional noise, so he suggested 70A, so I'm going to give this a try. Following the provided instructions by Ronald, there is a specific orientation of the shift lever, and it should look like this. In order to fit the shift lever into the carrier, you're going to have to remove the selector rod and then drop the lever into the carrier. Now you should be able to reinstall the carrier with the lever assembly. Reinstall the tabs through the front bushings. Next is to install the carrier into the rear bushing, which earlier I mentioned I didn't know that you can pry it open, so I struggled really hard trying to get the carrier back in, but I couldn't, so I ended up removing the bushing. Bushing that the shifter carrier goes into, I thought it was welded on. Well, this piece is actually welded on, but the bushing and the metal casing around it's actually removable. You can pry it out with a screwdriver. This is what it looks like removed. So with the bushing off, I was able to easily slide it back onto the carrier and reinstall it into the chassis. So get one side connected first, and use a pry bar to roll the other side in. Almost. Got it. Now we're going to install the selector rod. But before doing that, you're going to have to remove the old gear shift joint because the kit comes with a new one. To remove it, you can use a pick to shift the retainer C-clip aside, and once that's moved out, you can push the pin out. Alright, so another thing is this little foam piece is inside the gear shift joint. I thought it was just in there as part of the packaging, but in reality you need to actually keep it inside the gear shift joint. As you can see, this is the OEM one. There is a foam piece in there. Alright, now we're going to put the pin through the gear joint and the selector rod to the transmission. Reconnecting the gear joint back onto the transmission is kind of tricky, so one of the things I found that was helpful was to seat the pin in the gear joint ahead of time before reconnecting it to the transmission, because there's not much space to work with up there. Alright, now we're back up inside the car. Gonna reinstall this rubber boot. Oh yeah, there's an arrow that indicates the front of the car. Shut this in. You put a little Dawn soap around here, just a little bit, really helps you slide the boot down. Alright, make sure it's completely properly sealed all around. I don't want any fumes from underneath the car to be coming inside the cabin. Alright, now we put the foam in. Hook up the wiring for the illuminated knob. Alright, there we go. So here's the new shifter installed. It's a 20% reduction compared to stock. There's much less play. Here's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Reverse. It has a much more positive feel to it. Much more solid than stock.